On today's episode of Locked On Canadiens at the Four Nations Tournament, Patrick Laine has some thoughts about his ice time.
You're Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into episode 1244 of Locked On Canadiens. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day and for subscribing wherever you get your podcast. Doing that supports the show and ensures you don't miss an episode. While I'm hawking the show, throw a like if you're on YouTube. Share it with your friends. It's a great way to support us and make sure that we end up in more people's ears and in front of them. We really appreciate all that you guys do. My name is Ian Boisvert, also known as @MaybeIt'sIan, and I am joined, as I always am, by Laura Saba. Laura, how's the bye week treating you? How are you used to the Canadiens not being on?
Honestly, it feels like I'm busier when the Canadiens are not playing than I am when they are. I'm a little bit tired. It feels like, the back-to-back 10:30 games again. But we have a lot of stuff planned to talk about today because we will never let our listeners down. We will be there for them 5 days a week unless an emergency or a holiday happens.
Yeah. No, it's nice because we get the nights off from games. As much as we like watching the Canadiens and having that, it is a big time commitment to watch and then do the show afterwards. It's nice to have that time back. However, it's difficult sometimes to find things to want to talk about. Thankfully, during this bye week, there is an international tournament happening, right? It's there's some Habs news baked into that. And one of those is, I think that for Montreal Canadiens fans, the most compelling story for you going into Four Nations is Team Finland, believe it or not, because Yoel Armia will be on that team playing a pretty significant role, as will Patrick Laine, who they released the lines. I shouldn't say released the lines, but they practiced and the lines were taken down. Patrick Laine finds himself on the second line with Sebastian Aho and Rupe Hintz, and Yoel Armia finds himself on the third line with Erik Haula and Teuvo Teravainen. Any thoughts on the placement there? Those are great line mates for those guys. I think those are really great mixes for these guys to find themselves in.
Absolutely. And I think for me, it feels like a reward for Armia more than anything else. Whereas with Patrick Laine, it was just kind of like, how do we get the best out of this guy? And that's why, that's where the placement comes from. I'm excited to watch Team Finland. I think, yesterday we talked about it, and my pick for the overall winner was Team Finland. I do think Sweden kind of has an edge, and you believe that the USA will prevail. I'm just here for the hockey. That's all, because I don't expect all that much from Team Canada, and based on the choices that they made and the people that they could have taken and left home. I think Team Canada is probably, to me, the least likely to win this tournament.
Yeah, no, definitely. And it's I don't like the fact that I'm picking the Americans to win. I think I talked about this on the last episode. I'm sort of a conflicted fan heading into these sorts of events. I don't really have a nation here that I feel like I can wholeheartedly support. Not to say, my family's Canadian. I was born in the States. I don't know where I belong. So I'm just really in it for the great hockey. As you're listening to this, it kicks off today, 8:00 Eastern. Canada will take on Sweden. That should be a really, really great game. I'm looking forward to seeing how these how an international tournament will work, but they're using NHL rules kind of like they did last time around. I did have a question about it, and then we'll get into some of the comments Laine made at practice. If it's NHL sanctioned, right? And let's say something happens, like someone boards a guy and it's a suspension worthy play. Do they get suspended? Can they can probably get suspended from the tournament. They'll take tournament games away. But player safety doesn't have a role in this. They can't take away NHL games and salary from these players, right? I feel like this is a massive loophole. You can just go out there and brain a guy if you wanted to.
It is kind of, because it's also this is a tournament that's governed by the NHL. But it's also it's not governed by the IIHF, so it's not like they can be held out of future international competition.
Yeah, that last gold medal game, if one team's running away from it, you have every incentive to just go out there and break someone's leg. I'm trying to find.
Kucherov is not eligible for this tournament.
This
I
is
did not
true.
say that.
And Canada didn't take Tom Wilson like I kind of thought they would, and maybe they should have because he's having a really great season. But
Mm,
like that's the kind of guy that I would imagine would go out there and do something reprehensible
yeah.
towards the end. But anyway, that's not the main story for us today. The main story is, of course, Patrick Laine, who I love the guy. He likes to talk a lot behind that microphone, and sometimes he says some stuff and he puts himself in situations that maybe he ought not to be in. I don't think that's the
Mhm.
case here, but I'll read you what he had to say today from practice. To be able to get on the ice a little more definitely helps. It's been kind of limited the past couple weeks with the guys I'm playing with here. I'm hopefully going to see more ice time. That's going to help, obviously. It's hard to get going when you've not been able to perform. I think it'll be a good turning point just to play good here at the Four Nations and gain confidence and keep it going with the Canadiens for the rest of the year. So I think that the first section of that sort of ran, and people were like, oh, he's upset about his ice time. But like, he knows he's not performing well. He makes that very clear. We've kind of talked about this, but let's rehash it again because obviously it's something that's on Laine's mind. So we were kind of right to be having that conversation. He seems to be looking at this the same way we did, which is it's a chance for him to reset his season.
Yes, absolutely. And then we talked about it in yesterday's episode, right? Like, is this going to help him right the ship? And I do want to mention something about those comments. Like, he was just being honest. We cannot jump on a guy
Yeah.
every time he's honest. Like, we can't expect him to be honest and then jump on him. Because the thing is, like, what people were running away with, as you mentioned, was the fact that he's not playing enough. And they forgot the whole point about him admitting that he was not playing well. He
Yeah.
absolutely fully admitted it. I do not understand why, earlier today everybody was up in arms about this, like all over all the social medias, people jumping on him. And it's like you one time said, like, if you had an idea about Patrick Laine before you came to Montreal, like, you are doing everything you can to keep that alive in your
Yeah.
mind, right? And to me, like, ascribing motivation that he did not have to his comments, like, is very disingenuous, because it's true that he's not getting enough ice time, but he acknowledges that the reason is he's not good. He's not
Yeah.
good right now.
He's
And
he's not doing enough to help.
right. And he's showing a willingness to use this tournament and this honor of playing for his country, or blah blah blah, whatever. He's using this to try and get back on track for the rest of the season. Like, it was about the Canadiens. Like, this is about the Canadiens. I want to be better for the Canadiens, is essentially what he was saying. So to me, like, I like his attitude. I don't like how people are jumping on him for parts of what he's saying, like selective quoting.
Yeah. Yeah, and look, that's going to happen in hockey. That's going to happen in sports. That's going to happen in celebrity. Is these guys get, taken out of context a little bit. Is he a little disappointed in where he's at in the lineup? Absolutely. I I think personally, because he's a professional, he's a competitor. I think he wants to use this tournament to show Marty St. Louis and the coaching staff, like, hey, I still have it. I had a rough go there for a little bit. Now I'm going to come back recharged and get ready to play the rest of the season. I'm hoping that we see this from him, like we kind of talked about, that he uses this as a springboard for the rest of the season. Let's quickly shift gears to Yoel Armia. How can he set himself up for success for the rest of the season? Is it putting on a great show so someone trades for him sooner? Like, are
Yeah,
they going to trade him while he's at this tournament? That doesn't seem
that's
like a
gonna
great
be really
idea.
funny.
Yeah.
That's gonna be really funny. But at least he's not, like, in like Cabo or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
He's not in Punta Cana, wherever they're going. I don't know. Like, at least he's here. And he and his little family can pack up and go. But I think for Yoel Armia, at this point, I'm sure he would have wanted to stay with the Canadiens and be part of what they're building. But you now have the chance to play for a team that's going to go into the playoffs, right? You showcase yourself as much as possible, and you try and really make yourself a desirable commodity, not just for trade reasons, but also because your contract is up, and in the summer you want someone to sign you. So I don't know if Dallas is going to be watching Team Finland, but we've already decided that that's a great fit for him. So we'll see what happens there. But I think for Yoel Armia too, it's just like he has been playing well all season. We haven't had any nights where we've criticized him all season long, right? Like, he's really been taking that contract year part seriously. And I think he's just a good natured person. So for me, like, he doesn't need to prove anything. He just needs to continue to do well and knocking on wood, hopefully not get injured. So the Canadiens are going to be able to trade him, get some sort of asset back, whatever it is. And he can have a nice long playoff run and maybe win a Stanley Cup with, I don't know, Washington, maybe, I don't know.
And give us a team to cheer for, right? Like I will go to the wall for whatever team, gets you. I mean,
within reason.
Assuming there's an asterisk, assuming it's not a team I already hate. If that's the case, it's over. I got whatever.
No Bostons, no Ottawas, no Torontos, no Tampas.
Yeah, that's fine. I think he'll go out west. Hey, Winnipeg Jets. he's from there. He's played there before.
You cannot return Yoel Armia without a receipt.
Yeah, return to sender. All right. We'll cut our Four Nations talk there. I'm sure we'll be talking about the games and the rest of the storylines that go on through that tournament. But when we come back, we're going to talk about size with the Montreal Canadiens. It seems like it's been an argument or a conversation about this team for decades at this point, and it still seems to be going a little bit. So we'll get into all that in just a minute. Looking to optimize your nutrition this year? Factor makes eating well easy with chef-prepared, dietitian-approved meals that are fresh, never frozen, and ready to heat and eat in just 2 minutes. With 40 options across 8 dietary preferences every week, you can customize your meals to fit your lifestyle. Whether it's Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, or Keto, Factor even offers wholesome smoothies, breakfast, and grab-and-go snacks to keep you fueled all day long. I love how Factor takes the stress out of meal planning. When I was fully working from home, I found that I was leaning towards a lot of takeout, unhealthy options for lunch every day. So I decided to try Factor, and I really enjoyed the quality and variety of options. It felt more like restaurant quality meals at home. The convenience is unbeatable. There's no prep, no mess, just great food in minutes. Eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/LockedOnNHL50 off and use code LockedOnNHL50 off to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's code LockedOnNHL50 off at factormeals.com/LockedOnNHL50 off to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. All right, Laura, we are back. And like we have for, 20 years at this point, we are talking about whether or not the Canadiens are too small. On yesterday's episode, we talked about the Canadiens potentially going after a guy like Trevor Zegras, who they've been rumored to be interested in for about a year at this point. Over a year at this point. There was allegedly some trades over the summer that didn't go all the way through. And we got some replies that he's small, he's soft, and not the kind of guy the Canadiens need. When you think of the Montreal Canadiens and the team that they're currently building, the one that's currently on the ice, where they're headed in the future, is that something you're considering? Is that something that in the back of your mind, you're going, yeah, this team could afford to be a little bit bigger?
No, because of who's coming down the pipeline. I think that's part of it. And the other part of it is that they're not actually that small. Everyone's always like, oh, great, another small forward or something like that. You hear that a lot with the Montreal Canadiens. Yes, there was a time when there were many more small components of this team, right? Laine Hudson's not going to get any taller. Cole Caulfield is not going to get taller. But arguably, those are the two best scorers on the team right now, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I don't,
So I have some of the numbers here from a website called Left Wing Lock. They update this daily to give you information on the lineup that those teams are putting out based on their height, age, weight, all that stuff. Right now, the Boston Bruins have the highest average height at 74.4 inches.
And
doesn't seem to really be doing much for them. Like that's not like, you know what I mean? And the Canadiens are third last at 72.7, which everyone will go, oh man, they're all the way at the bottom. Listen to the numbers though. Boston is at 74.4 inches and the Canadiens are at 72.7 inches. That's less than 2 inches between those two teams on average. Is that really worth getting all upset about? I can't find myself to have that emotion. Looking at it by weight, Montreal is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8th in the league in weight. So
Yeah.
207 pounds average across the team. That's because Arbor Xhekaj is I believe, the heaviest player in the NHL right now. That is a big boy. Uh, I feel like we have this conversation every so often, and
Yes.
what I find especially funny about Canadiens fans is they'll go, the team's too small. They're not going to be able to play at this size. They need to get bigger. And in the same breath, go, Cole Caulfield's going to score 50 one day. Those two things can't exist together. So figure it out. Either they can play small or they can't. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know how to parse those two ideas together.
I think in today's NHL, if you aren't going for small scale players, you are putting yourself at a disadvantage. I'm not saying that size is not a factor anymore, not at all. But the way that the game is evolved is you have to have the right mix between who's playing heavy, which positions they're at, and what they're able to do with their size and like pure skill, because you cannot win with plotting, you know, lead-handed, whatever, like, players. And so like it's great to have big players. And like I think this is coming, especially like I remember when we first started hearing about this about the Montreal Canadiens, is I think when the Ducks won the Stanley Cup, right? And they used to have pretty large players, and the Canadiens are small down the middle, blah blah blah. But at the end of the day, there are a lot of teams that are small, and a lot of those teams do end up succeeding. And I think that the biggest thing is having a healthy mix, because you can't just say that you're going to go with size. Like the Canadiens need size. I'm just like, I want to remind you about Ivan Demidov, right? He's on his way here. I know Michael Hage is very skinny, but he's also very tall. He can fill up. He can get bigger, right? Like the Canadiens are not actually that small. And I think the thing that's really interesting is that the players that are small, they tend to be the most skilled on this team. Now, I'm not saying Newhook is as good as Cole Caulfield at scoring goals, right? But like, who's the best defenseman on this team? Hands down. Like, far and away the best,
It's the bone zone. It's Laine Hudson.
Yeah.
Like, that's
there
the
you
guy.
go. Yeah.
I think I'm glad you pointed out Newhook, because I think that he brings something to the game that big guys typically can't, which is his speed. Right?
Yeah.
You ever play the old ice hockey for the old Nintendo, where you pick a country and then you pick your lineup by like sizes of guys, and you take the big round guy, or like the medium guy, or the skinny guy, and the skinny guy was so fast, but he could get bumped off the puck so easy, and the big guy can hammer the puck, but he can't really move that fast. That's sort of how you have to think of how you build your lineup, right? You can't have all big guys. You can't have all these round dudes out here just hammering the puck who can't skate. That's not something that you can. That's a Mark Bergevin defense core. We saw it. He did that. For better or worse, like guys like Shea Weber, he wasn't as fleet of foot. Ben Sherratt, Joel Edmondson, who he was definitely responsible for signing again in Los Angeles to whatever contract they gave him. Bonkers. Like Douglas Murray, wasn't that a Bergevin thing? Yeah. Douglas Murray mentioned.
Oh, I don't
put it on
remember,
the board.
Yes.
It was close. It's around the same era, but that's sort of what I'm talking about. And the Canadiens, I think they have 4 forwards under 6 foot. 6 foot is the NHL average.
Yeah,
they have 4 players under that. Or 4 forwards, I should say. Cole Caulfield being one of them. Alex Newhook being one of them. I believe Nick Suzuki comes in at 5'11". I'm going to check really quick.
Nick Suzuki, and who else is there? Who am I missing?
Cole Caulfield. Oh, Brendan Gallagher at 5'9".
How can I forget that guy?
And when has size ever mattered for him?
Yes,
never.
Exactly.
It's literally never mattered. Like,
you could argue that skill has also not mattered for him.
Yeah, I mean, his fingers don't matter for him anymore. Like he's not using them, that's for sure. Like he can, like, I used to joke that when Gallagher was still on his way back to like the form that we see him at now, he would put himself in great position to do things, and then his stick would turn into a wet mop. Yeah. And like that's not really the case anymore. Like he's never had the hands, but like he doesn't really need to do that now. And he's still an incredible player. The guy with the wet mop stick on this team is Christian Dvorak. Like every time he gets the puck in a scoring chance, it's not going in.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I also want to point out the defense really quick. Alex Carrier is under 6 feet. Does anybody care? I
he
certainly
doesn't play like it.
No.
He doesn't play like it. He plays like an Arbor Jack-sized player.
Yeah, you're like Francis Bouillon.
Yeah.
That was another small dude who just did not care that he was small. That's not to say you can fill out your roster with all of these small guys, right? You definitely can't. You look at like the Florida Panthers who just won the cup, like they had most of their players are over 6 feet tall. I think there was one forward under, and it was Ryan Lomberg the year that they won. But like, that's in a copycat league, everyone's going to try to do that. The market inefficiency is small players. That's where this is headed, where those guys are going to be valued less, and you'll be able to get them cheaper.
Exactly. Well, like how Cole Caulfield dropped so low.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
Or
We
Laine
would not
Hudson, for that matter.
Yeah. And Laine Hudson's brother, who I don't think is as small as Laine is, but like that was a factor in both of those guys not being drafted as high as they could. If Laine Hudson was 6 feet tall, he would have gone first or second overall. Like
Absolutely.
the skill set that he had, was well apparent at that point. It was just, can he do this at the NHL level because of how small he is? And he went, yeah, I can. And he continues to prove people wrong who thought
every day.
Yeah. All right. We're going to head into our final segment and bring back a bit. What's up, Doc? We'll figure out what we want to see from Kirby Dach after the 2-week break, and we'll get into that in just a minute. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with wonderful pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to keep you feeling fuller longer. Personally, I love the no shells variety. It's the perfect grab and go snack for busy days. Whether I'm snacking at my desk or on a road trip or just need a quick protein boost, they're always my go-to. I especially like the different varieties of no shell pistachios like sea salt and vinegar or chili roasted. Sea salt and vinegar are my absolute favorite. And if you love cracking open shells for every satisfying crunch, don't worry, we haven't forgotten about you. The in-shell options are always a classic favorite. Get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. All right, headed into our final segment here, Laura. We've set up this season and Kirby Dach's return to it with this in mind, that it was going to be a very long on-ramp. He's shown signs that he can get out of it. He's kind of regressed back to what we had seen earlier, as did everybody on this roster going into the break, so it's not specific to him. But he's going to get some time to sit back and relax and rehab his body a little bit. I'm sure everybody's banged up in some way, shape, or form. And I think it's kind of go time for him on the other side of this break, because he needs to start proving to the Montreal Canadiens brass that he can be a second line center on this team. Because if he can't, or there's at least some doubt in the Canadiens' mind that he can't do it, the time is now to act on it. And that means spending assets to go get another guy that can play center. That's not to say I'm kicking Kirby Dach off this team, but maybe they shift him to the wing because he cannot handle playing center, which we've already seen a couple times. Where are you at with Kirby Dach and sort of his rehab and return to the NHL? But in more specific terms, when he comes back, what sort of improvements do you want to see?
I want to see him look less lost, which sounds very wishy-washy and abstract, right? I don't have any concrete numbers for lostness. That's not a statistic we keep track of. I just want to see him make better decisions with the puck. And I want to see him play the way that we saw him play before he got injured last year. So when he first came to Montreal, after a few games, when people started noticing what he can bring, that's what I want to see, because I refuse to believe that Kirby Dach himself thinks that this is okay. I don't think he thinks he's playing well right now. And I think that he's capable of more. I think what the Montreal Canadiens traded to get him, or more, I guess, like, because at the time there was a possibility of trading up and picking a center, and the Canadiens did not do that. Instead, they traded Romanov, blah blah blah, and got Kirby Dach. Right, like that was their big move to get a center, to get a large center too. Right, so the Canadiens invested a lot in this, and so if you look at the Kirby Dach today, like is he providing a good return on investment? Not today. No, not right now, because they want him to be. And this is the thing. They want him to be the kind of guy who is like legitimately your second line center, or who could challenge Nick Suzuki for the top center spot. I
Yeah.
don't think that's happening ever, but
No.
I do still think that he can be a second line center. And so I think that, for better or for worse, he needs to show something, because the Canadiens have shown that, in fact, instead of being extremely married to their own decisions, they are willing to cut their losses and go in a different direction, as they showed with Justin Barron, right? He couldn't fit in. They're like, bye. They got somebody who did fit in. So to me, I think the biggest thing is that he has to prove it not to anyone other than himself, because if he doesn't believe it, then Kent Hughes and Marty St. Louis are not going to believe it.
Yeah. No, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think the things that are plaguing Kirby Dach at this point are mental. It's between the ears. He needs to realize that he is an effective player on this team. And that's been a challenge, because look, I know that we all know that plus minus is a bad stat. However, you don't want to be last in it. And that's where Kirby Dach is. He is last in the NHL as a minus 29. It cannot be. He knows this. He knows what his plus minus is, or at least he knows that it's not very good. That's, to me, usually plus minus is not indicative of a player's play. I think that's pretty fitting for what we've seen defensively from Kirby Dach this year. Let's be quite honest. They get hemmed in their own zone. He was like that before Laine got there. He's been like that with Laine there. And now that Laine is off that line, they're still getting hemmed into their own zone. Like, it's not there are issues there that are plaguing this player, that he has a hard time in his defensive zone. And people will say, oh, wait, he's not creating offensively either. Yeah, he spends 45 seconds in his defensive zone. He can't go the other way. He doesn't get a chance.
Can't get into the offensive zone.
Yeah. So, and Marty needs to be able to have a second line center who he can trust to take a draw in the defensive zone. Yes. I don't think that's Kirby Dach right now. I don't think it's been Kirby Dach since he got here. And I just don't think that he can afford to come out of this break playing the way he went into it. And it's going to be entirely up to him. He's going to have Alex Newhook on his line most likely when we come back. And Alex Newhook he's been playing really well. He's been playing very, very well on the wing there, on the second power play unit. He's going to have Josh Anderson on the other side most likely, who hopefully takes these 2 weeks to just sit in a chair on the beach somewhere and not do anything other than that, because he is so banged up. I don't want to know what he's dealing with, because it's probably grotesque, but he's playing through something awful. And it's going to be up to Kirby Dach. Like, I am not at the point with him anymore where it can be, well, look who he's playing with. His line mates aren't great. Yeah, but no, at this point, it's on Kirby Dach to at some point drive his own line. I love how you mentioned the whole he could usurp Nick Suzuki as the number one center thing that happened like 2 years ago. And that seems like ancient history, because it just doesn't seem like it's possible at all at this point.
It's a totally different person. And I do want to make a point, is that, like, yes, this is the What's Up Doc segment. We're not singling Kirby Dach out specifically for criticism, because there's a lot of criticism that could go across this entire team. In the last 10 games or so, we have seen things that we do not ever want to see again. We have seen a team that has just completely forgotten all of the gains that they made over the course of December and January. So again, like, this is not to pick on him. It's just that he needs to, like, if you are a center and if you are a top six center, there is an outsized amount of responsibility on you. And so he needs to live up to that, or they're going to replace it with somebody, or they need to replace it with somebody who can shoulder that responsibility, right? There's a reason why we're not talking about, Brendan Gallagher this way or whatever, right? Partly because Brendan Gallagher is one of the only players playing well right now, but also because the responsibility on Brendan Gallagher right now, or in the future as part of the core, is non-existent.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
his role in the rebuild is different.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Gallagher's role in this rebuild is to shepherd it to guys like Dach, to leave this team in a good space, maybe get a couple last playoff runs before his career ends or before his contract ends. Exactly. But yeah, Kirby, the reason why we're doing this with Dach is I won't say the rebuild hinges on him, but he's a big linchpin here. He's very important. You know,
Yes.
they cannot afford to go Nick Suzuki guy down the middle. Like, that can't be a thing.
That's not a contending lineup.
No, it wasn't when it was Plekanec, Desharnais, somebody. It wasn't a thing. It was very difficult for them to compete. Just like, you know, when Bergevin was still here and he turned the team over to Suzuki and Kotkaniemi and said, "You guys are the centers of the future," and he got one of them right. Which, you know, I guess is more than I can say about myself. But yeah, I think, you know, we're not picking on Dach here. We're all just very invested in his success, as are the Montreal Canadiens, and I think that's an important factor in trying to figure out how this rebuild is going to work. And if they can't find a number 2 center in Kirby Dach, they need to look elsewhere. And I hope we don't get to that point. I like the dude. The dude seems solid, but it's a business and they need to start winning games soon. Maybe not this year, but soon.
Absolutely.
Cool. All right, let's do our trivia and get out of here, huh?
Let's do it.
All right. Yesterday's question: who was the last player to score a goal at the Olympics while also under contract with the Montreal Canadiens? We did get one answer in the comments on YouTube that I will give partial credit to. I do not have the name on offhand at the moment. Sean Farrell was the guess. He scored a hat trick in the 2022 Winter Olympics, where none of the NHL players went. And while that is kind of correct in that he was Canadiens property, the question was who was under contract with the Canadiens and scored. So I will give you a half point. But the correct answer, as far as my research could tell, was Thomas Plekanec in 2014, playing in Sochi for Czechia. Thomas Plekanec. So it's been a while, since the Canadiens have had somebody under contract, but also it's been a while since anybody's gone to the Olympics that, you know, can call the NHL home. Yeah. So very much looking forward to that in a couple years. All right, you had our question today. Do you want to read it? I wrote it down as well, but I want to give you your flowers if you have the question.
Sure. So when was the last time? So you can give me the year that the Canadiens swept the Stanley Cup final. So they won in a sweep in the finals, not just in the playoffs, in the finals. What year was the last time the Montreal Canadiens did that? Because spoiler, they did it a lot. Give me the latest one, please.
I'd like to see one of those one day, but that's for a different episode. That's going to do it for us today on Locked On Canadiens. Thanks so much for making us your first listen of the day and for subscribing wherever you get your shows. For your second listen, head over to Locked On Fantasy Hockey. Get the edge over your league mates with daily tips from Steal and Flip. Subscribe to Locked On Fantasy Hockey wherever you get your podcasts. We're Locked On Canadiens everywhere that you can post something. So go find us. Twitter, or not, we don't really use Twitter anymore. Blue Sky, Instagram, TikTok, lockedoncanadiens@gmail.com. Send us your mailbag questions. We're recording the mailbag on Thursday, so get those questions in, and we will get to your questions on Friday. You can find me online at Maybe It's Ian. You can find Laura at The Active Stick. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you guys tomorrow.